Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Reverend Jerry Phillips from the Calvary Baptist Church of Arlington. Welcome, sir. I appreciate you coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Am I allowed to tell one quick story?
Sure.
It's non-political,
You can tell whatever you want to tell.
even political?
You can tell whatever you want to tell.
No, well, I'm going to do
I'm
that.
not going to.
When Lyndon Baines Johnson was president, and I see the heads around here, a lot of people can remember that.
Some of us can remember it better
Some of
than others. I remember it.
And, of course, it's some that we want to forget, too, right? But anyhow, he was having a meeting such as like this, you know, and he asked Reverend Billy Graham to come and to give the invocation. And so when the meeting began, he said, Billy, go ahead and begin your prayer. So Billy began to pray. In his kind of polite voice, President Johnson says, "Speak up, Billy, I can't hear you." Billy said, "I wasn't talking to you." Now, I was told that there wasn't a group in Fort Worth that needed praying for him more than this group.
We won't argue
Now,
that.
I was just told that. That's hearsay. Okay, so I don't know how true that is. But let's go to the Lord in prayer. And I trust that this time I appreciate the opportunity just to open this with prayer. And I know you do every week. But I hope that it's not just a formality, that we do seek our God for counsel. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we bow before you this morning, Lord, just to give you praise and thanks for who you are. Lord, our Creator. Lord, we thank you for your blessings upon us. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege that we have to come into your throne room this morning. Lord, to speak to you, knowing that you know our hearts and you know all about us before we ever say a word. But we come to you this morning, Lord, for your counsel. We know, Lord, that wisdom comes from you. So today, Lord, we just ask that you would give wisdom to these who will be conducting this meeting, and for those who will have some type of deliberation to present. We just ask for your leadership and your guidance for this group. And Lord, above all, we pray that in the end, that you'll be glorified, and we'll give you the praise, Lord, for all good things that you do for us. We know, Lord, that all good things come from you. So bless this day to your glory, and this session, Lord, to your glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Mangus?
Your Honor, we do not have any announcements this morning.
Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of August the 14th. Those bills.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have several proclamations or presentations to make today. The first is one that Commissioner Fickus received at the National Association of Counties annual meeting in Pittsburgh this year, and it is an award for the Northeast Transportation Summit, which Commissioner Fickus initiated several years ago and has continued to grow. And so I will just present this to you and congratulate you.
Thank you
on that.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. I want to
thank the great job our staff does in putting that together, and we're looking forward to doing the next one on February 17th.
Won't be long.
Is that the right date? 15. Okay.
Close.
Close.
You got the right one. The next is for, I'm going to present a certificate from the Texas Historical Commission to our own Tarrant County Historical Commission. And I know we have several folks here from the commission today, and I'm going to ask them, along with Commissioner Fickus, to come forward, and I'll present you with this certificate here. Y'all roll out. Don't be bashful.
They're probably tired. They were here last week to receive this award.
I don't be telling stories. This is,
Give me a hello. No, you know what I'm talking about.
congratulations again. Thank y'all for everything. This is from the Texas Historical Commission, and it presents this 2011 Distinguished Service Award to the Tarrant County Historical Commission in recognition of its active and well-balanced preservation program. Again, I really want to thank y'all for everything that you do. We really do take the history of Tarrant County very seriously, and I know it's through y'all's hard work that we keep being reminded of what's gone on in the past, and also that we record the current so that many years from now, when Commissioner Johnson is still serving on the Commissioner's Court, we'll know and be able to have the history of this. So, again, thank y'all, and if any of y'all would like to make any comments, feel free to step up there and do it.
We need to get pictures first.
Y'all can come on around here.
Ladies in front. Ladies in front.
Come on in here, Bill. I'm gonna move you here. I'm amazed. It worked the first time.
Well, thank you very much. I am Jack Edmonds, and I'm currently serving as chair, but I'd like to introduce these others.
Step around.
Art Wyman is our treasurer. Cindy Wilson Eric is our past chair. Beth Kaiser is parliamentarian. Joe Purtle is our chair-elect, and Ren Carell is our archives committee chair. Now, let me say that I'm really the rookie. These people have the experience, and they're the ones that keep this commission going. And so all credit goes to them. Thank you all.
And I will move that we receive and file not only the Historical Commission presentation, but also the presentation to Commissioner Fickus from the National Citizens Council. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next is a proclamation, I believe, Commissioner Brooks, that you have.
It's for ratification only. It is recognizing Dr. T.A. Sims for his longevity on the Fort Worth Independent School District Board of Trustees.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Fickus, you have a resolution for life gift.
I do. Let me read it. And when I said February 17th a minute ago, for that date of our race, our transportation deal, that's actually the 17th of February is my second birthday. That's the date I had my transplant. So we're going to do this a life gift, and this next February 17th will be 5 years. So, whereas Life Gift, a not-for-profit organization with an office in Fort Worth, recovers organs and tissues for people needing transplants in 109 Texas counties. And whereas August 18th, 2012 marks Life Gift's 25th anniversary of saving and healing lives. And whereas nearly 114,000 men, women, and children await life-saving organ transplants across the country. And whereas 10,000 of those individuals are Texans and nearly 2,000 are from the Fort Worth area. Whereas another 1 million individuals across the country need transplants of bone, skin, heart valves, and corneas. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, on the occasion of its 25th anniversary, do hereby congratulate Life Gift for its dedication in restoring lives. I would move approval.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And I would like to ask Ron Earl, who is the Managing Director of Life Gift, the North Region, to come up, and I will present this to Ron. We appreciate all you do. So, thank you. And we had a good Life Gift run in May.
In May, I think over about 1,000 individuals dealing with that. I'd say a few words if I could.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Oftentimes, the infrastructure of our community often gets the blame when things don't go right, but seldom the credit when things do go right. I look at the Commissioners Court here as part of the infrastructure of our community. The relationship that organ donation has had with this Commissioners Court is long-standing. I would be amiss if I did not also recognize J.D. Johnson for the work that he has done over the years with this, the work done with the Medical Examiner's Office, getting that done, the work done with John Peter Smith Hospital, the Tarrant County Hospital District Hospital, who will be receiving later this year an award from the Department of Health and Human Services for the work that they do in donation. So, as Commissioner Fickus, mentioned, over 100,000 individuals, currently waiting. But I do want to recognize that the infrastructure of our community is what makes this work. Without its support, more people would die waiting than already do. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you and the community that we serve. This means a lot to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a resolution, Commissioner Fickus, for the Unity Church in Grapevine.
Yes, and this will be presented this Sunday, so I would like to move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
You now have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of public hearings. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Members of the court, it's requested that the Commissioners Court consider lowering the speed limit on Stevenson Levee between Taylor Drive and Rendon Road, located in Precinct 1, from 45 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour.
This isn't a public hearing. I would ask if there's anyone here who wishes to speak to this matter. There being none, then I will close the public hearing.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
It is also requested that the Commissioners Court consider the removal of a yield sign and the placement of a stop sign on Sandy Beach Road at Steinfeld and Eustis Drive, located in Precinct 4.
I'll open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak to this matter. There appearing to be none, then I'll close the public hearing.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have 5 additional items to bring to the court this morning. Item number 1, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court accept the Texas Department of Transportation grant award as it relates to the expansion of the DWI no refusal activities across the county.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, on item number 2, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court concur with the actions of the Tarrant County Hospital District's Board of Managers that occurred on July 12, 2012, and approve a contract with Hutchinson Construction for the work associated with JPS Health Network Stream Lab project.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
What is a stream lab?
Basically, what's happened within their lab, they are connecting the various machines that will provide data, move data from one machine to the other automatically.
So this is an IT kind of.
You know, it basically what happens, it creates an automation line to connect the chemistry analyzers within the core lab itself.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
From the court, on item number 3, we would request Mr. Mendez to address that issue with the Commissioners Court.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The North Texas Tollway Authority is requesting a resolution of support for their recently adopted legislative goals for the upcoming legislative session. These goals, there are 3 goals that were adopted on June 20th, and they include enhanced toll enforcement remedies and other tools to support the effective and equitable collection of those tolls. As there's a significant amount of revenue in play in the collection of tolls and the amount of tolls uncollected, even in Tarrant County, staff is recommending approval. We do have a representative from NTTA here, Kerry Rogers, the Director of Governmental Relations, to answer any questions if there are.
Move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Members of the Court, our final 2 items. On item number 4, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve an exception to the county's travel policy as relates to Constable De Leon from Precinct 5. As you know, he is not going to be in office as a constable at the end of this year. So he has requested that he be allowed to go to the 2012 pre-legislative conference, which is going to be held in Austin. Our policy requires that an elected official in their last year seek Commissioners Court approval in order to do educational or other travel.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
It should be pointed out that he will also be getting training at this conference for his next Tarrant County elective assignment, which is as JP, Justice of the Peace of Precinct 5. So it's not just a junket.
Stand.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, our final item is item number 5. We're requesting that the Court concur and approve a within-region travel as it relates to County Criminal Courts number 3 and 5.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Members of the Court, under the District Attorney's section, we have the annual contract. It's a 3-part contract involving the county, the hospital district, and the District Attorney's office. This is an annual contract, and this year, for the first time in several years, it now is synced up with the fiscal year of both entities, and we would ask for your approval on this.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is requested that Commissioners Court approve Amendment Number 4 to the contract with Arthur Wyman Architects for professional architectural and engineering services related to the 1895 Courthouse Site Improvement Project.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Are we pretty much through? This is approving what, an additional about $130,000?
Yes, sir, we're not through. Once this is for to update the 3.5-year-old design construction documents, because the City of Fort Worth has changed their code to the 2009 International Building Code, and these were on a different code when we designed these back in 2008. Also, we're asking Art Wyman to develop a set of bid documents as an ad alternate, to remove the 2 remaining angels unharmed. And we'll be able to give you a price for that separate. Also, we're asking Art to provide a set of documents to bid to convert the basement of the old civil courts building into a reservoir and attach the necessary pumps and irrigation systems to irrigate the grounds with the water from the reservoirs which come off that property.
So all this is getting us ready to be able to tear down that building.
Yes, Judge, it is the next step. We'll be able to take these documents and give them to the Purchasing Department to bid the demolition in October or November of this year. I believe the demolition will take probably 4 to 6 to 7 months, depending on the contractor and the type of demolition method we use. And about 90 days before we finish demolition, we're going to go ahead and bid the restoration of the west elevation and improvement of the west ground. So we won't have any. We'll have some overlap on our bid packages, and hopefully this project will be finished, if it all goes well, sometime in 2014.
2001?
14.
What do you plan on, what's your plan for the use of the other 2 angels at your
Well,
Tell us your name.
It won't work.
right now, I think it's insurance is one factor, because we haven't put the first 2 angels on any buildings yet. Number 2 is we might actually try to use those in the future for something. We're going to see if it's economically sensible to pay for the removal of these 2 angels unharmed and crate them and deliver them.
Would they fit on your new subcourt?
Too big. They're too big. We got small building. Isn't that right, Mr. Phillips?
That's spot on.
Way too big.
Spot on.
I'm sure that since downtown Fort Worth has taken on an angelic theme, that we can find some use for these angels.
Yes, Commissioner.
Fourth and save.
My next,
Vote. Motion passes unanimously.
my next item is request to the Commissioners Court approve a professional services contract with Air Engineering and Testing for testing, adjusting, and balancing of the HVAC air and water systems for the new civil courts building.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And lastly, it is requested the Commissioners Court approve a real estate listing agreement with Jones Lang LaSalle Brokerage Company to sell the Education Center.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Glenn, Mr. Worthy.
I move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Worthy.
Our second item is approval of a waiver of terminal benefits for the probate court 1. The incumbent of that position is retiring at the end of this month with 26 hours of vacation. The cost the waiver is going to be a total of $483.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Smith.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm very proud to have been asked to serve as point person for all of the county departments, particularly those members of Public Health Department, in brainstorming and putting before the court today a dental discount program in coordination and cooperation with the National Association of Counties. This is the second program that comes before you that is a cooperative health-related service program intended to benefit our residents as a membership benefit of y'all's decision to join the National Association of Counties. The first is a prescription drug discount card program, wherein for over the last 5 years to this date, in July of 2006, we began the program and residents have saved $1.4 million by use of a simple card. No enrollment, no ages, no anything. Just a matter of presenting a card and receiving the discount. Well, NACO has done it again. With the guidance and leadership of that organization, on December 1st of 2011, the board signed a contract, NACO, with Carrington to provide a third-party vendor agreement, and then has opened up in pilot programs that ended in May. And I'm proud to say that we will be the second county through your Commissioner's Court to consider signing a contract with NACO for their discount dental program, dental discount program. There's two different programs. I got to really be careful to keep them separate. But indeed, I am very proud to present to the court today seeking your approval of the National Association of Counties Dental Discount Program Acknowledgement and Agreement between Tarrant County, National Association of Counties, and Carrington, Inc.
Move approval.
Second.
Discussion?
This is one heck of a program. It costs us somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 or so a year to belong to NACO. It is programs like the health card, the dental card, and other programs that we find out about at NACO conferences and bring back home and put into practice, like the Tarrant Cares program that has benefited our community so much. These have given us leverage on the money that we spend to belong to NACO that is in the hundreds of percents a year. We get our investment back many, many, many times over. So I would just add that this program was developed under Judge Whitley's presidency of NACO, so we're kind of proud of it. I don't know why we weren't the first county.
I hear you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you all very much.
Lou Brewer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Public Health has one item for your approval. This is interim financing for fiscal year 2013 for the Nurse Family Partnership. We have one outstanding interim funding project we brought to you a few weeks ago, and we have received notice from the state that they will be sending us the funding.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Beecham.
Your Honor, other members of the court, we have 5 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-121. This is our annual contract for armored car service. Our recommendation would be to award on a per enterprise basis. Selecting as our primary vendor, Trinity Armored Security Incorporated. Our secondary vendor, Loomis Armored U.S.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item is another bid award recommendation for bid 2012-125. This is our annual contract for the purchase of pickups, vans, and utility vehicles. Our recommendation will be to award on a per enterprise basis, awarding sections 1, 2, and 3 to the primary vendors meeting all specifications as shown in your court communique.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3 is another bid award recommendation for our bid 2012-150. This is our annual contract for asphalt road surfacing products. Recommendation will be to award on a per enterprise basis, awarding to the 6 primary vendors as shown in court communique.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our fourth item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-154, the sale of recycled paper. That recommendation would be to award on a per enterprise basis to the high bidder, corrugated services for cardboard and ledger at $77 and $256 a ton, and evergreen fiber sales for the Gaylords and newsprint at $25 per ton.
Move approval.
Second. A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last item is an item in which we are seeking exemption to the competitive bidding requirements allowable under Section 262.024A2 of Vernon's Texas Codes for the purchase of drug standards and controls for the ME's office to ensure accurate conclusions on toxicology testing.
Move approval. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I guess they're using medicine over there to cure anybody.
Was this the last time?
It's the last time, yes, sir. But, and I'll take that opportunity just to say thanks to each one of y'all, because y'all have always treated me so well, and I've loved almost every minute of working here. So thank you.
Almost every minute?
Almost every minute. All right, and today I'm here to request that Commissioners Court approve an easement agreement and a temporary construction easement agreement for the realignment and reconstruction of a low-water crossing. It's located on Winscott Plover Road, south of 1187 in Precinct 1. We're also asking that you accept, receive, and file the easement documents.
Move approval. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. And again, thank you for your many years of service.
Thank you. I'm going to miss you guys.
Are there any appointments? Being none, then you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Before we get into the briefing items, I do want to ask the court that we close our meeting today in memory of Jim Pryor. He was an employee in the IT department, did a lot of the training in that particular area, and he passed away last night. So that's all right. We'll close in his memory today. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have several items for the court this morning. The first one is the monthly update from the Tarrant County Hospital District. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. I do want to thank you on the court for your recognition last court meeting of Dr. Grimes. We will miss Dr. Grimes. Dr. Grimes was the chair of our OBGYN department and a great individual, and he unfortunately lost his battle with cancer. It was a private affair, did not really want people to know, but we will miss him. He was a great bridge between JPS and UNT as we conducted our affairs. He improved the department significantly. He had the highest ranking patient satisfaction scores. He went from last to first, and he was amazing, and he will be missed at JPS. And I think it brings up to mind the JPS Cancer Center. The JPS Cancer Center is not located on our main campus. It is a few blocks down on Hemp Hill. And the Cancer Center is an incredible place, and it was just recertified to be the cancer center serving our patient population. But more importantly, our oncology nurses are some of the best that you get. And none of us know when we may be afflicted with cancer and what effects it may have. And we have a team down there that have T-shirts that they wear every day talking about winning the fight and being willing. And the attitude that they have down at the Cancer Center is pretty amazing. And what we have as a goal is to have all the oncology nurses are working in a program to be certified in oncology. It's a higher level of certification, and we will have 100% of our nurses certified in that program by the end of the year. That's a powerful statement. There are a lot of cancer centers that don't have every one of their nurses certified in oncology care. The other thing is when we were receiving our 3-year recertification program, we hit some of the highest honors, and there were over numerous accommodations. There were 6 accommodations recognized in our cancer center, and we've never received those ranks before. So I think to our cancer center and the work that they're doing, sometimes because they're not part of the main campus, we have a tendency to not call them out as we should call them out in their positive approach to dealing with our patients. And whether you have no money, a lot of money, whether you live on the east, west, north side of town, you get cancer, you need help. And our cancer center is there for those individuals, and we do a good job, and I'm proud of them. So thank you for recognizing Dr. Grimes, and thank you for allowing me to recognize our cancer center, because they do some incredible work. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is we now have officially been certified for our next 3-year program for our trauma center. As you well know, we're the only level 1 trauma center, and we have gone through now our first recertification program. We had no outstanding issues. They asked us to look in the next 3 years at even increasing the amount of research that we do. They were pleased with what we were doing, and we're now in the midst of bringing in a few more surgeons in our trauma care that will provide additional research. We are very focused on trauma care now. We need to diversify and also include the research element to it. So I wanted to include those 2 items for you. Those are their updates. Also, I want to thank you as commissioners for your interest. We've had some meetings of late trying to figure out what we do regarding issues that concern all of us, providing the best care that we possibly can to the citizens, and I appreciate the interest that you all as county commissioners play in that. You take your role with the public hospital very seriously, and we take the role very seriously at the hospital, trying to figure out how we can enhance care, and I appreciate y'all's efforts to do that. And I know that y'all have a big briefing agenda today, so that's all the items that I have is our 2 recertifications that we're both very proud of, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very well. In fact, I just ran alongside of the horse, and thank goodness I was not judged because the horse won. I think I would have lost. So we did well. Thank you for asking. Thank you.
He's ending his tour of the state fairs of the Midwest, or the middle of our country, I guess. Illinois, Milwaukee.
Outside Chicago and Indiana and Iowa. And I will tell you in the august body here that if you have ever attended 6 state fairs, you're an incredible person. They are incredible. You meet some really interesting people at 6 state fairs. And I have befriended them all.
You get to taste a lot of jams and jellies and pies and.
Yes, and then they do some crazy things. In Iowa, they make a macaroni sandwich where they take macaroni and grill it on a sandwich, and then they eat it.
It's almost like fried. It's almost like fried butter, isn't it?
It is. It is bizarre. There are some strange people out there. You all be careful.
Some of them are running next to a horse.
Some of them are right here.
Next.
As it relates to the fried macaroni, the next one concerns an update on obesity policy. Mr. Fabio is here to address the court at this time.
So you top fried macaroni.
It'd be tough to beat. Good morning, Judge.
Good morning.
I'm here to give you a briefing on the Obesity Prevention Policy Council activities to date. Whoops. All righty. In early 2010, the Public Health Agency was working with a group of people in a Pioneering Healthy Communities initiative. And it was in that group that we started to see the beginnings of a shift from doing programmatic thinking and activities over to public policy and using that to address obesity epidemic here in Tarrant County. They began talking about what could be some investments and some strategic investments to address obesity and the epidemic. And the first that we did was we launched 2 Obesity Policy Council luncheons. The first was on December 6, 2010. The second was October 20th, 2011. It was hosted by the Public Health Agency. In January 2012, we had our initial council meeting, and it took place at our agency, and the council since that time has met on the second Friday of every month. We have 24 members that are a part of the council. The purpose of this council is to drive policy, structural and environmental change in Tarrant County communities to promote healthy eating and physical activity. The council membership, Commissioner Brooks is our chairperson. We have in other sectors, local government, higher learning institutions, ISDs, nonprofits, healthcare systems, and public health. Early on in the existence of the council, we were fortunate to have some marquee companies, as you can see there. They were Alcon, American Airlines, GM, and Radio Shack. And they have, for the most part, been very engaged with us and participating in trying to move forward with identifying what we would have as our first focus area of a policy. The council then formulated 3 objectives, and that was to try to guide and frame what we would be using as our evidence-based policy to address the obesity epidemic. And as you can see in the first one here, it was choosing and implementing at least one identified evidence-based policy regarding access to either healthy foods or increased physical activity countywide by the end of this calendar year. The second objective that we did was to be implementing at least one evidence-based policy regarding access to healthy foods or increased physical activity, but we wanted that to be within the jurisdiction or the member organizations that were part of the council. And
Doug, advance your slides one more time.
okay, I'm sorry. Let me leave that there. Then that was my second one. Now, the third was around evaluation. That was an important piece because we're going to be launching soon, and I'll talk about that in a moment, our pilot program. And in that, when you do an evaluation, you garner important information to try to be making adjustments. And by getting some of that information in our pilot program, then we'll be able to make the necessary adjustments, and then when we launch it in the new calendar year, it'll be a more successful policy campaign. Over the first 5 months of this calendar year, the council went through doing a fishbone diagrams with nutrition as a focus area. They looked at physical activity as a focus area. It went a couple months of doing that, emails, sending information back and forth. We then did a nominal voting process, and we finally came up with what would be the focus area of the #1 policy. And that was to advocate, develop, and adopt policies that would ensure clean, attractive, and safe walking routes or stairwells at all of our facilities. Plans have been underway for a couple months now to launch that pilot public policy initiative, and in that we decided that there were 3 important criteria, and that was it needed to be cost effective, it needed to be easily implemented, and it also needed to be sustainable. The pilot program is going to have 6 members from the council, and those members are going to be the City of Arlington, the YMCA of downtown Fort Worth, Alcon, HEBISD, Tarrant County, and Tarrant County College Northeast. The period of time it's going to run for 8 weeks is going to be from September 17th to November 18th. Some of the process metrics that we think should be included in this over this 2-month pilot program are the number of presentations that the different organizations use to try to promote the policy initiative, the documentation, if they have a walking policy already, we want to know that. If not, is it a new initiative? The number of participants that they hope to involve, and then the percent of individuals that would be completing this pilot program. We'll be doing an evaluation piece, and then in the December meeting, we'll report out to the council members. And that concludes my briefing to you. I'll field any comments or questions that you may have.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
All right, Judge.
Members of the Court, our next presentation is going to be an update on the West Nile virus. Dr. Parker is here to address the Court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here to update you today. I wanted to let you know that all areas of Tarrant County Public Health continue to work diligently to address this situation through analyzing the human case information, the environmental health data that we receive, including what's what we gather by our laboratory operations. Our MRC volunteers from preparedness have been ready for recall to assist with education and outreach for different cities who may feel that necessary.
You're saying MRC?
MRC, I'm sorry, Medical Reserve Corps. And also communicating with all of our local partners, which includes other local, regional, and state health officials, the medical and hospital community, and our school districts. Specifically for our school districts, we have developed a mini toolkit, which includes general West Nile virus information, guidelines for the administration, faculty, and staff, and a sample letter for parents that the schools can distribute once school begins next week. Also in preparedness, they're awaiting receipt of a limited one-time donation from the S.C. Johnson Corporation of repellent that's to be distributed to agencies serving seniors and the homeless population, and we expect that later this week. To bring you up to date on the case numbers at this point, there have been 205 total cases reported to Tarrant County Public Health. 146 of those have been West Nile fever. 59 of those have been the more severe type of the West Nile neuroinvasive disease. And unfortunately, with report of 2 additional cases yesterday, the total deaths in Tarrant County is now 4. I'd be happy to field any questions that you may have.
When are we going to start spraying in the county?
Okay.
I know the cities are spraying, but we have sprayers, and we're not allowed to use them anymore, only the health department. When are we going to start spraying in the unincorporated areas of Tarrant County?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to answer that question. What we've been working with the cities in the past and the way that the cities have come to the decision to spray is based on the epidemiological and the environmental health data that we receive. So we take into account what's going on in a particular area regarding human cases and also the mosquito samples that you get. I try to identify if there's a number of cases that are clustered geographically, and when we say geographically, we look for a half-mile radius because that's the typical flight pattern of the offending mosquito, and then also for the positive pool samples that are there. When we see all of that information together and it looks like there's a cluster, or some people have called it a hot spot, then we work with the city, and as we would work with the county, to make the recommendation or the suggestion of, if this is what we're seeing in this area, if you would like to spray, then this is, we would support you in doing that. But what we try to do is identify positive cases in a cluster and the environmental data that would support spraying.
So have we found any offending mosquitoes in the unincorporated area?
Well, we have had, when you mean offending mosquitoes, we have had positive pool samples, yes. Those have been all throughout Tarrant County. That's one of the things that's reported on our map that's updated daily. So yes, there have been positive pool samples, but we don't look at that in isolation. We look at that in relation to human cases. And no, we have not yet identified a cluster or a hot spot of cases in the unincorporated Tarrant County that we feel that spraying would be necessary.
Okay. That was the question I was trying to get at. So we've not had any report. Have we had any reported cases?
Yes.
Unincorporated areas, yes.
Yes, we have had, I'm sorry to cut you off, we have had reported cases in the unincorporated Tarrant County. Again, what we try to do is take those cases that have been reported, and we analyze that information by onset of symptoms and accompany that with our positive, when we look at the mosquito samples, to determine if there's a hot spot or a cluster occurring that could benefit from spraying.
Have we seen our numbers going down, or what has been the trend of our numbers in recent days?
Well, over the past 2 days, the 2 reports, we have seen lower cases reported to Tarrant County than last week. Last week we were averaging approximately 10 cases per day. We have seen slightly less than that over the past 2 days. It is too early to tell if that trend will continue. But in order to hopefully have that trend to continue with the recent rains that we've had, we really need to be vigilant about going out there and draining standing water. That's source reduction. That eliminates the breeding grounds of mosquitoes. Hopefully some of these rains and some of the creeks and things like that will have washed the larvae away that were already developing there. That's why rains can be helpful. But also anytime you're outside, especially at dusk and dawn, but from dusk to dawn, wear appropriate clothing and or insect repellent.
Dr. Parker, I don't think it has ever been made clear to the Tarrant County public the differences between the types of clusters, the way the disease has manifested itself in Tarrant County as opposed to Dallas County, for instance, that would make our approach more appropriate for Tarrant County than what they're doing elsewhere.
Okay. What I can say to that is in Dallas County, they have had a higher number and percentage of the more severe type of disease, the neuroinvasive disease, than we have here in Tarrant County. That percentage is...
And in greater clusters.
Yes, I was going to try to break it up because there are a number of things to look at. But thank you for bringing that up. There are a number of things to look at for that. So one is the percentage of the neuroinvasive disease, and it is significantly higher in Dallas County than it has been here. Another is clustering of cases that we were just talking about as to the reason for having not yet sprayed in an unincorporated area. And that's the cases in Dallas County have that they're clustering together geographically and in time along with positive mosquito pools. And those areas are not diffuse across the county, but in specific localized areas in the 3 cities that were first mentioned when they talked about spraying. The other thing that you look at is the, as I briefly mentioned, are the mosquito samplings. Where are those cases that have been positive, and how do they relate to the clusters of cases that you're seeing? And also one of the other things that you factor in is the environment that you're looking at with the case clusters. Is it amenable to ground spraying? Concentrated ground spraying the 3 days in a row, or is that best? Would that area be best affected by an aerial spraying tactic? So those are some of the other things you look for. Death rate is death. The number of deaths are considered in that, but again, there's a multitude of factors that go in to look at what the best type of mosquito abatement may be. But all of those, regardless of whether or not it's ground spraying for nuisance, if it's concentrated ground spraying, maybe in a targeted area, or more generally, or even aerial spraying, you have to follow a good larviciding program, or you will just generate more mosquitoes.
So you would say that although we have not taken aerial spraying off the table as an option for Tarrant County, that it is not yet appropriate under the conditions that we find in terms of the manifestation of the type of disease, the clustering, the trapping. It is not yet appropriate for us to go to that step in Tarrant County.
Yes,
Is
that's
that your position?
Yes, that's my position, and I would add to that the environmental factors that were briefly mentioned as well, so the type of terrain that you're looking at and the clustering of the cases.
So we are continuing to monitor, and we're continuing to assess the effectiveness of what we're doing and adjusting as conditions would warrant.
Absolutely, every single day.
But again, and we're also stressing again the 4 Ds that we've talked about. Stay in or around the dusk and dawn time frame of the day. When you are out, use the DEET. Use a repellent that has DEET in that. Drain any standing water that you either have on your property, or for that matter, if you're out walking and you see standing water, at least attempt to turn that over if you can and do whatever. And then the other thing is dress appropriately, which would be long sleeves, long pants, things along that type.
Yes, absolutely. And in a phone conversation that Ms. Brewer had with Commissioner Lakey from Austin about that today, was he reminded us to continue to stress those measures that you just mentioned. I would also like to add to that about draining standing water. Many of our city partners have code enforcement divisions, and they are taking calls from concerned residents about standing water that they would like the city to address. So if an individual has that concern, I would direct them to their local code compliance.
Now, we did, I know that last week, I believe, Commissioner Fickus, you had at your facility a training session with our maintenance and road crews that everybody attended, where we were talking about the little mosquito dunks.
Yes.
And the ability to distribute those into standing water. Again, that's the most effective way. If you've got standing water that you obviously can't, like a pond or something along that lines, that is the most effective way to kill the larvae that would be associated with that type of standing water.
Yes. That's also, because if you have a pond, then you want to protect what's in the pond, and so those are natural ways to rid the pond of the larvae, but still protect the...
And again, the spraying does not affect that larvae. It would be the dunk, the mosquito dunks, or again, turning over and...
Yes, the spray, you're absolutely correct. The spraying that is used does not affect the larvae. You still have to have an active larviciding program regardless of what type of spraying is done.
Let me make sure I understand. You answered my question, and that is that there are no plans to start spraying or fogging by the health department in Turner County today.
Yes. Correct,
Yes,
not
there is
today.
no plan.
Yes, there is no plan, not today. Now, we continually analyze the information, and should we see information that's different than what we are currently seeing, then those plans may change, and those plans could change tomorrow or the next day. But it depends on the information that we're seeing at the time. But to answer your question, no, as of today, we have not identified any environmental and epidemiological clustering that we feel would necessitate spraying in the unincorporated area.
And if that were to change, you would be communicating with the commissioners and myself if the person.
Well, we get that information from...
We get it on a daily, yeah.
I understand you form a committee at Public Health. Can you speak to that effort to centralize the command and coordinate, communicate, and manage this issue?
Yes, we have formed a special group there at Public Health to do those things that you just mentioned, to help centralize the communication, not only internally within Tarrant County, but externally to all of our partner organizations and the citizens. And we're specifically looking at different ways to communicate with different segments of the population, as well as make sure that all of our county officials are getting the information that they require and desire to know about the situation.
The two individuals who passed away recently, I understand they're in the 80s, right? Can you mention specifically, are they living in a retirement home? Is that I'm concerned because of all senior citizens, especially in my area, in the East Arlington area, who have senior home where seniors tend to go out and continue to garden and so forth. Do we have a plan to communicate a little bit more proactively to those groups? Are we doing that at all?
Yes, representatives from Public Health are speaking with agencies that specifically offer services to seniors about educational programs and working with them. Regarding your question about the 2 recent deaths, I don't have that information of whether or not they were residents of senior facilities or senior living. But yes, we are working with the senior agencies to get that information out to them. And as I mentioned, a portion of this limited one-time donation that we will be receiving later this week is supposed to be directed to agencies serving seniors.
Well, my staff, we are ready to work with you, okay? So we're waiting for instruction from your office in ways of communications or proactively coordinating with senior homes and so forth in our area. So if we can help you in any way, we are waiting for your instruction.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. Thank you. And we know that all of you have been working with us to address this situation, and we appreciate that as well.
Any other questions at this time?
Don, I might make one comment. Commissioner Wynn brought up the issue on the communication in this work group that we put together in public health. That also includes emergency management. And we're communicating on a daily basis with emergency managers within the cities. We're pushing information out to them. They're pushing information back to us. Our emergency management coordinator is part of the team that's at public health on this. We've also established the communications with our city managers and our superintendents of school so that we can continue to maintain that free flow of information back and forth.
You indicate on our website the locations of the fact, the number of pools located within a city. What once you locate a pool, what's the activity or what are the results of what we do once we've located a pool?
Okay.
On the website, you indicate positive mosquito pools. We have 71 as of yesterday's update. 10 are in Arlington. You list them by cities.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What do you do with that once you determine that you have a positive pool? What do you do?
Yes, what we do with that information is, one, we let the city jurisdiction know about that positive mosquito pool so that together we can begin general outreach and education to individuals in that area, as well as targeted outreach around in a half-mile radius around that positive pool. Also, code, and in many cities, code compliance or code enforcement is involved, and they go out and do special inspections to look in that area to reduce any of the mosquito breeding sites. So it starts with education, and as we have that information, and then we take the epidemiological information that is what's reported on human cases, we analyze those things together and then make further recommendations for different mosquito abatement and education outreach activities.
But then it would be up to each one of those cities to determine whether or not they wanted to spray in that pool area.
Yes, based on the information that we provide them, and also working together with them. We try to be a resource to them with not only the mosquito pool information, but our human case information, and also as the health officials, and say, when they ask our opinion, then we try to give our opinion based on the situation that we're seeing there.
I would hope that somebody would go either try to drain that pool or drop some larvicide in it.
Yes, when we're talking about pools, it means a pool sample. Not necessarily just like a swimming pool or a pool of water. But yes, you're absolutely correct. Pools, anything that can't be drained, ponds or those sorts of things, do need to have, the larvicide applied to them and be properly maintained so that mosquitoes cannot breed there.
How do you determine for example, I'm driving down the road, I see construction sites and I see pools of water. I also would be driving and I might see, a little tributary off the Trinity Earl Creek that is still. How do you determine, one, how many of the mosquito dunks, and who would at that point in time actually be the ones that should be looking at throwing those mosquito dunks into that still water?
Well, as far as how long should, should water sit, we just say a couple of days. It should be, drained within a couple of days.
4, 5, or 6 days?
Mhm, yeah, about 4 days, but, we want to be proactive and err on the side of caution there. So we just don't want it sitting for a very long period of time. I would think that the answer to your question would be it depends on who owns that property. If it's your property, definitely, go out and, get the mosquito dunks and do what you can, to help with that creek there. There are instructions on the package for that. Very small areas of water don't require the whole dunk, and the dunk can easily be kind of chipped or broken so that you can put what you need to in those areas. But commercial areas, should be taken care of by the persons that own them. And if it's a city area, city maintained or county maintained property, then I'm sure the persons responsible for that on those levels would be taking care of those.
Like your lake?
Like our lake. Judge Whitley brings up an interesting point. It has never been differentiated to this point in any of our discussions that there might be a difference between standing and flowing water. Would you discuss that?
Yes, there is a difference between standing water and flowing water. When we're talking about standing water, we're talking about in pots, in containers, even something as small as an aluminum can, a soda can that has collected rainwater. That's enough water for a mosquito breeding site. Lakes, especially if the water is flowing, that isn't as much of a concern, but it's what happens before you get to the lake. There are some pockets of standing water in that area, and so if you're going to the lake for recreational activities, that's when the protection with your clothing and with DEET or an insect repellent would be most helpful.
All of our precinct guys are now certified to use the larvicide, and they know how much to use and where to use it and how to use it. So our lake will be taken care of.
Any other questions? Just to continue to encourage people to take the precautions, the 4 Ds, and then also we've talked a lot today about these mosquito dunks. It's my understanding that the public can purchase those for use around for their own property at Lowe's, Home Depot. A lot of your little feed or hardware stores have these available, and so I would just again encourage people to take the preventative action. And I think again there are some cities that are ground spraying, and we'll continue to communicate and collaborate with them and make decisions as we go along, as we continue to see the numbers and how those numbers are rolling out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
When you make your presentation next week, could you provide us with an updated map with confirmed cases
Yes.
on it?
Yes.
So we can see how it has changed over time.
Yes.
I get one of those almost on a daily basis from the health department.
Yeah, but the public doesn't get to see your map.
Well, they should.
Well, the map is also available on our website.
Just bring them.
I will. Yes, sir. But for the public who do have access to that, it is available on our website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, Mr. Manius, next.
Thank you, Your Honor. We could go to item D. This is an update from the Texas County and District Retirement System. Mr. Kuna is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning, Judge Whitley, Commissioners. That time of year again. So today I'm going to speak about your TCDRS retirement plan. Specifically, I'm going to talk about those things that make us different than the retirement plans you're hearing negatively about in the media. And then I will go specifically over the details of your Tarrant County plan. You've got a very comprehensive PowerPoint presentation in front of you, and in the interest of your time, I'm going to be skipping over some of the slides and just hit the highlights. But most certainly, if I skip over a slide you want me to cover, please let me know and I'd be happy to do so. I want to begin by highlighting the strengths of your TCDRS plan. First, it is an employee savings-based plan, and you are advanced funding the future benefits you promise current employees. Our funding policy is the most conservative in Texas and one of the most conservative nationally. One of the things that makes it so conservative is that we do not allow our employers to have contribution rate holidays or to pay a required rate less than what our actuary determines on an annual basis. So they are fully funding their plans. And secondly, we adjust all of our employers' rates annually to make sure that liabilities are funded within a closed 20-year amortization so that they do not roll forward to future generations. And lastly, as a court, you have flexibility in this plan to control costs. On any given year, you can choose to adjust your benefit levels to meet your budgetary needs. Okay. We were created in 1967 by Texas legislature, and we are governed by a 9-member board of trustees that are appointed by the governor, approved by the Senate. We do not receive any state funding. Benefits are funded from employer contributions, employees' own money, and, of course, investment earnings. We also do not charge any fees to employers. As of December 31st, 2011, the total size of the fund was $17.6 billion. We are one of the largest 50 public retirement systems in the country, and you benefit from those economies of scale. This graph represents the aggregate funded ratio for the system as a whole. At nearly 90% funded, TCDRS is in the top 20% of public employee retirement systems when it comes to its funding level. You can see from the graph we've been near or above 90% for the past decade. Ratings agencies such as Fitch and S&P consider 80% and above a general indicator of a public plan's good financial health. As I mentioned before, TCDRS is a savings-based plan, and a portion of your Tarrant County employee's paycheck goes to fund their TCDRS benefit. Tarrant County employees are contributing 7% of their pay towards their retirement, and each year their account grows by 7%. At retirement, employees' monthly benefit will be calculated based on their final account balance, the employer match, their age, and the option that the employee chooses. Employees are only entitled to the employer match if they vest and become retirement age eligible. If they withdraw their money at any point, they forfeit the right to the employer match. It is estimated that only about 35 to 40% of Tarrant County employees and your future employees will actually retire and receive employer matching. You choose the amount of the employer match. It can range from dollar to dollar all the way up to $2.50 for every dollar. And right now, Tarrant County has a 2-to-1 employer match upon retirement. We will discuss your employer contributions and how the benefit is funded in the upcoming slides. I want to recap the benefits of your current employees. As I just mentioned, employees are depositing at a rate of 7%. The match is 200% or 2-to-1. Your current vest is an 8-year vest. That's the minimum amount of time a person has to work to earn the right to retire when they become retirement age eligible. The 3 ways to become retirement age eligible are at age 60 with 8 years of service, through the rule of 75, where a person's age plus their years combine to equal the number 75 at retirement, or 30 years of service in any age. If you decide to lower an eligibility requirement, such as 30 years any age down to 20 years any age at any point in the future, just know that it does apply to all employee groups. You cannot elect to have different eligibility requirements for different classes of employees. And of course, it does affect the rate as well. And one of the things that I think a lot of employers don't realize is that when those eligibility provisions are adjusted down, it's a permanent change. It can never be raised back up in the future. So something to consider. Let's look at your workforce and your retiree profile here at Tarrant County. On average, your employees are 47 years old with 13 years of service here at the county. With
You're about average and some are above average.
yes.
You talking to me?
No, I was talking to him. He's the average.
Well, the average 13 years of service, I know where to go.
With an average annual compensation of a little over $50,000. Your retirees, on average, retire at age 62 after serving Tarrant County for 18 years, and currently the average annual benefit in retirement is $25,000. This excerpt comes from your retirement plan assessment, and it is just shows you the replacement ratios for a new hire at Tarrant County who deposits at 7% and earns that 2-to-1 match upon retirement. The middle bar, for instance, indicates that if a person works for 20 years and then chooses to retire, they would be replacing approximately 52% of their final salary in retirement. Of course, we all know the benefit of this plan comes with time. The longer you stay, the better the benefit. If that person decided to stay another 5 years, that replacement ratio would go up to 70%. Now that we've reviewed your benefits, let's look at how those benefits are funded. Because you and your employees are saving for benefits in advance over your employees' careers, you get the maximum power of investment earnings over time. Currently, 77 cents of every benefit dollar going out the door comes from investment earnings. An additional 13 cents of every benefit dollar comes from employer contributions, and the last 10 cents comes from employees' own pocket, what came out of their pay towards their benefit. So you can see how important investment earnings are to funding the benefit you provide. So let's look at our investment history. There we go. I want to highlight that we are long-term investors at TCDRS, and what I mean by that is that on average we see our careered employees work approximately 17 years for the system and are retired another 20 years. So that's almost a 40-year time horizon in which we have to invest for one member of the system. So we do not focus on short-term results, but rather the long-term results. And over the long term, we have exceeded our long-term investment return assumption of 8%. Our annualized 30-year return is 9.9%. And just to give you an update on where we are currently, at the end of Q2, the fund was 7.1%. So in a perfect world, our investments would produce exactly our long-term 8% target return year after year. This is a portfolio manager's dream. Oops. Well, you can't really see the gray band on here. That's okay. There is a gray band. Maybe you can see it in your court books. Oh, you can see it? Okay. Sorry to the people back there. You can't really see it.
What happens if you take off the floodlights here? No, forget it.
Okay. Well, for y'all, let me explain it. Of course, we know that we are going to expect a certain degree of fluctuation in any given year, and we assume that our returns in most years will be within a range of 10% either way from our long-term investment return assumption of 8%. So that means in any given year, we expect our returns to be between positive 18% and negative 2%. While achieving the 8% over the long term. So that gray band represents that range of volatility that we expect in any given year. So let's look at what's actually happened over our history. This graph shows that our actual return between the years 1992 and 2011, a 14-year time period, the portfolio has performed mostly as we have expected. The majority of our returns do fall within that gray band, with the exception of the Great Recession in 2008 and the subsequent recovery in 2009. The many different types of assets in our portfolio minimize the risk of possible losses from any single asset class or investment. Asset allocation determines 90% or more of our returns. When constructing asset allocation, we are balancing achieving the long-term return goal of 8% while mitigating year-to-year volatility. Employer rates are determined by annual benefit selections and actuarial assumptions. The 5 main actuarial assumptions we look at from year to year to determine rates are return on investments, payroll growth, expected retirements, withdrawals, and mortality. Our actuaries adjust employer rates annually to meet accepted actuarial guidelines over the long haul. The 13.84% required rate you are paying as an employer is doing 2 things. It is funding current employees' future benefits, and it is also funding any liabilities over a closed 20-year window. So let's talk a little bit more about those unfunded liabilities. We don't like the term unfunded liabilities at TCDRS because it implies that benefits you promise employees are not being funded, when in fact, by simply paying your required rate, you are funding those benefits and any liabilities within a 20-year window. You may wonder how you get liabilities in your plan. The ways that that can happen is by passing a benefit enhancement that hasn't been advance funded, such as a cost of living adjustment for retirees. Another way is when actual plan experience differs from what was projected by the actuaries, such as investment return. And just as a reminder, losses and gains from investment return are smoothed over a 10-year period, and that is for rate stability, so that rates in any given year do not spike or do not go extremely low. When we smooth them over 10 years, rates can be more predictable and steady for employers. Your rate has gone up beginning in 2013 for 2 reasons. The first is in the investment return category. You can see that it went up 0.52 basis points, and that is a result of investment losses from 2008 that are still in the pipeline and that are incrementally getting passed through for another 6 years. You also had a rate increase of 0.33% in the demographic and other changes category, and that is due to payroll and salary variation. So let's take a look as to what we see. This is just a projection of where we see your rate going. Of course, this is bearing that we do achieve that 8% return, so if we have returns better than 8% or less than 8%, it will affect that line. And that's one of the things that affects it on a year-to-year basis, and why we like to come and give you updates on year-to-year, is because that line does change depending on the investment return. So this is based on your current plan. If you maintain that 7%, all of your current benefit levels, if you make no changes to it, this is where we see your rate going over the long term. This is where you'll notice it's about 2% higher where we saw your rate going right after the 2008 market downturn. When we were smoothing losses and we were going to filter them through for 10 years, we projected that your rate would eventually go right to about 18%. And then after the 2009 and 2010 positive returns of 26% and 12.7%, that line was lowered. So that just shows you the power of investment returns and what good years can do. It has a rate lowering effect. So that green line represents where we projected your rate to go after those 2 years of returns in excess of 8%. And then that's just to show you where I started off. After 2011, the blue line represents where we see your rate going today, and that includes the negative 1% loss from 2011.
That drop-off that happens about 2029.
Yes.
Is that when the 10 years worth of losses roll out of the pipeline?
That's a good question.
Some pandemic event?
The losses actually roll out at about 2019, so you see the rate increasing through 2019, and then you see it flatten. And that is because that represents the amortization period, so the rate will increase for that 10 years through 2019, then it will stay at that level while it is amortized for another 10 years. Drop-off represents the liabilities being paid off after that point. Correct.
And that will happen more rapidly should we make additional payments toward our unfunded liability?
That will, yes, the amount of years would decrease if you fund the plan with extra funds in excess of what the actuary determines, yes.
What's our unfunded liability? Do you have that number?
I do know that number. That number is $166,315,325. And this graph is a representation of assets in comparison to liability. The green area represents what Tarrant County has saved up for benefits. The red area represents the liability. And you do see that the red line does decrease the further out you go in time, and that's because by paying that required rate, you are funding them within that closed period. Currently, your plan is funded at 80.4%. You are representative of the majority of plans in TCDRS. 69% of our employers are greater than or equal to 80% funded, but less than 100. So that's roughly 429 of our 600 plans are within your funded ratio category. And again, you can't see the highlight. Well, you can probably see the highlighted, but y'all are currently, this just represents the local control and flexibility you have in the plan, because in any given year, by adjusting the employee deposit rate and or the employer match, you can either increase your rate or decrease it. So you can have either an immediate rate increase or immediate rate decrease by having control over those benefits. Y'all are currently at the 7% 200, which is 13.84%, but this just shows you the control that you have to control costs if your budget required y'all to reduce benefits for any reason.
So again, if we reduce benefits, it would only be for new employees?
No. If benefits are reduced, either the employee deposit rate or the employer match, it's kind of like the eligibility requirements. It applies to all employees. It cannot be for different employee classes. Administratively, TCDRS just isn't set up to run a tiered sort of system.
In any case, in any case,
yes,
the so-called unfunded liability will resolve itself within a 20-year period, barring any other unforeseen event.
You are correct. Yes, that is why we adjust that rate annually. So by simply paying that rate, you are funding your liabilities responsibly within that closed 20-year window. And any additional contributions would just fund them faster than a closed 20-year period.
What are the benefits of funding it faster?
That's a good, let me move to that slide. Takes me right to the end of where I want to be, how to keep rates stable. The benefits of either making, there's basically two ways to curb costs in the plan. One is by making a lump sum contribution in any amount, or by paying a higher elected rate above the rate that the actuary requires. So for instance, your rate is 13.84%. So a higher elected rate, for example, would be 14% or 14.5%. And by doing that, you're doing two things. One, you could either be pre-funding any sort of benefit enhancement for employees or retirees in the future, such as a COLA, or it's also used to mitigate any sort of investment loss that we might incur in the future. So any negative plan experience, it goes to counteract that by paying more into the plan. So those are really the two benefits of making additional contributions to the plan. And it does have a rate lowering effect on your rate. You would see some positive plan experience to mitigate any negative plan experience you might have in those other 5 categories I talked about: investment return, mortality, retirements, things like that. Demographic and other changes, that payroll variation. If the lump sum was made, it could mitigate some of those losses. And those were the highlights that I wanted to hit. Do you have any other questions or perhaps any slides that I skipped over that you want me to go over? Be happy to do so.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the court, we have two additional briefings that we'd like to talk to you about. The next one is going to be somewhat lengthy. We're going to be talking about budget-related issues. If we're ready to move to that, we'll start.
Court ready, or do you want to short break, or just let's go on? Let's go.
Very good. As we've spoken with the court in the past, we continue to put this item on the agenda so that we can discuss various things with the court that will eventually get to the point where we submit a budget for your final approval and then adoption. What we'd like to talk to you about today are really two things. One would be we've had a request from the justices of the peace as it relates to salary increases for the JPs. We'd like to talk to you about that. Also, we began discussing with the court last week the issue with how we were going to handle compensation, additional compensation, that either being both the non-law enforcement and the law enforcement. We'd like to have a discussion as it relates to that also. We have handouts. I think that if it's okay with the court, we'll start with the non-law enforcement, law enforcement discussion. With that, Mr. Worthy will be addressing the court.
And I do have an audience participation form on that, so as a part of that, I will also call on Bobby Harden in a minute.
So good morning again. You might remember last week we did discuss with you the proposals that the Law Enforcement Association brought forward to us and provided you some cost estimates on those proposals. And in addition to that, we brought forward some options or ways that we could distribute our pay increases for next fiscal year that are within the amount that is currently in the budget, which and so what we have provided to you just now is we've worked on refining those proposals and have these for you for your consideration, and they are within what has already been budgeted. So for the non-law enforcement employees, we have a proposal of a 3% structure adjustment, which would be effective January the 1st, and then a 3% merit pool, which would allow for increases from 0 to 6%, and those would also be effective January the 1st. The structure adjustments for those employees hired before August 1st would be handled within the merit budget. So if you had an individual that after the structure adjustment fell out below the new hire-in rate, you would address that as you decided what to give them in for their merit increase and from that merit pool. And then for those employees that have been hired or will have been hired after August 1st, those would be addressed just as an adjustment to hire-in based on their probationary period like we do right now. Okay? And of course, employees must have been hired by July 31st to be eligible for a merit increase. There would be a 3% salary increase for elected officials, project employees, and unclassified employees, with the exception of the district court judges and the Court of Appeals justices. You might remember there's been discussion about those previously. And then, of course, the associate judges, magistrate, and the chief magistrate are dictated, their salaries are dictated as a percentage of the district judge salaries. Okay? And then employees must receive a performance appraisal of 2.95 or greater in order to be eligible for the merit increases, and that is similar to what we've done in the past. And then we would use the September 30th salary as the basis for the merit increase calculations. And the cost of all of that without fringe benefits is about 3.6. And again, that is included within the budget. And so that's the only option we are proposing for the non-law enforcement employees, unless someone makes another recommendation or suggestion. And then,
Robin, before we go to the law enforcement, just what this does, this takes us back to our normal process that we put on hold a couple, 3 years ago. It takes us back to the standard pay for performance type incentive pay that we provide our employees. So what we're trying to do on this one is simply bring us back to a norm that we've had for the last 15 years.
Can you explain item 1 and item 2 of
Yes, sir. So a 3% merit pool, we calculate a 3%, a 3% structure adjustment. Well, the structure adjustment would mean that the whole structure moves up. So the minimum would move up by 3% and the maximum would move up by 3%.
A 3% structure adjustment, and then we also do a 3% merit pool.
Yeah. Now, within the non-law enforcement structures, when the structure moves up, the employees do not automatically move up with that structure. Okay? Now, we would want to adjust anybody that fell out below the minimum, but again, that would be addressed through that merit structure or their probationary period adjustment
We're not
rate.
giving 3%.
That is
Not
correct.
6, it's a total of.
Right.
You're looking-
That is one pool of money, that 3.6, that all of those issues would be addressed out of. But this would allow us to adjust our hire-in rate to hopefully keep up with any adjustments that have happened in the market so we could remain competitive. It would also address the issue of those employees that might be maxed out so that they could have an increase to their base pay. But it would not be an automatic. That would all be through the merit process, and so it would be based on their performance appraisal and the determination of the appointing authority as to how they award that pool of money.
Before we move on, I want to stop and ask the court for any comments or discussion they would like to have with regards to the non-law enforcement employees. Are we okay with this?
Well, I have kind of a question on what I guess Randy was at. So we're creating a 3% pool of money. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that money's sitting in a pool, hadn't been distributed to anybody. Then we've got a 0 to 6% merit raise.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same money that's in that.
That is the same money. That is correct. And so each department would have...
3.6 million in that pool. So
Correct.
if I give somebody a 4% raise, which I guess we can do,
Yes, sir.
somebody else is probably going to get a 2.
In your department?
In my department.
Correct.
Right.
Well, the way the calculation is done, it's a 3% calculation on 12 months' worth of salary. However, we only award it for 9 months because we don't begin the award of those increases until January the 1st. So therefore, that 3% is really worth about 4% per employee. So yes, theoretically, if you were to give somebody 5 or 6%, then yes, theoretically, someone else would get less than that amount. Some departments may have some attrition that may assist in that, but yes, you are correct that in some cases, for one to get more, someone else might get less.
Salaries, those employees that are topped out,
Yes, sir.
do they get this too?
Yes, the structure is going to move, meaning the minimum and the maximum. So for the non-law enforcement employees, they would get an increase. They would be eligible for an increase to base pay.
And it would be by the 3%. So on those particular ones, you could not, if somebody was at max pay and the structure moves up 3%, then in the course of your evaluation process, if you wanted to give them more than 3%, it would not.
What we've done in the past with that is they would get the 3% to max, and then if, for example, if you wanted to give them a 4%, they'd get a 3% to base pay and a 1% as a lump sum.
And again, a lot of times what HR will do is they'll work with you to help you know when you've reached the top of your pool.
Right. You're provided, each department is provided a worksheet that has a listing of the employees, their performance appraisals, and then you have the ability to put the awards you want to give them, and the worksheet will turn red if you go over your budgeted amount, or if you try to take somebody above max, it will look at all of those issues.
That's all I had, Judge.
Did I misspeak?
Anybody else have any questions or any discussion? And do we want to basically affirm this schedule for the non-law enforcement employees before we move down into the next one?
How about approval?
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Now we'll go to the law enforcement employees. Currently, our law enforcement employees are in a step system, and so they have a step A through K. Step C is normally the hiring rate for most of the positions and pay grades. And over the years, employees, based on review dates, have been moved from one step to the next based on a performance evaluation before we froze those steps several years ago. And as we looked at different methodologies of how to start that process back up, there certainly were some pros and cons of how to handle that. And so we've allowed two options for you to consider today. The first option would be the elimination of the STEP program and implementing a merit system for the law enforcement employees in a similar fashion to the non-law enforcement employees. They would have a minimum and a maximum, and they would move through that range based on their performance appraisals rather than on a step increase that was a fixed amount based on a performance appraisal. And, of course, there's pros and cons to both of these options that we are providing to you. One of the, I think, challenges to this particular system would be if we have a common review date and for the Sheriff's Department to be able, specifically the Sheriff's Department that has such a large number of employees, because we certainly have law enforcement employees elsewhere in the county as well, to do their appraisals at one time of the year. And I know that that has, they have some concerns about that. So the same rules that apply to the merit increases for the non-law enforcement would apply if we were to eliminate the STEP system and create a merit system. It would eliminate the staggered appraisal. Our second option, option B, is to remain in a STEP system. There would be no structure adjustment, so their structures would stay just the same. Whatever a 52C is worth today, it would be worth next year also. Okay? And we would restart the STEP system with everybody's current review dates in place. So we would just start it back up. So if an employee had an effective review date in the system right now of April, then their next chance for their STEP increase would be April 2013 based on their appraisal. Okay, so we would re-implement it. It would allow those employees to still have the staggered review dates and the staggered awards, so the reviews would be in the evaluation process would be staggered as well, which would eliminate some of the burden on the Sheriff's Department, and I think they had a concern of that. One of the challenges with that is if you, for example, have an employee that was hired in January of 2009 and you have an employee that was hired in April of 2011, that January employee will actually receive their increase, their step increase, because their review date would be in January. So there would be some creation of some compression and some issues like that. That is going to happen with a step-in system once you've stopped it to restart it. And that's just to make you aware of that issue. So as we move forward with that, we would not move the structures. So those employees at Step K would be eligible for a 3% lump sum as long as their performance evaluation was 2.95 or better. We would eliminate the 6-month salary increase between E and F for grade 51s. You might remember quite a few years ago we were having some recruitment challenges, and we allowed the 51s to be hired in at E and within 6 months to go to an F. We are proposing that we would eliminate that, so the period of time between a 51E and F would now be 1 year. And then we're going to propose a change to the hiring rate for the grade 53s to a step D, instead like dog, rather than C like cat, so, and that would be effective October 1st. There are about 99 employees that are currently at a step C right now, and so we would adjust those to a D effective October 1st. And that, again, is to address some recruitment issues that we're having in that area. And then, as with all of our increases, typically we require a 2.95 or greater for any employee to be eligible. Again, both option A and option B are within what has already been budgeted and provided to you as our overall compensation budget for fiscal year 2013. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. I know you do have an audience participation, and of course the sheriff is here if you
Robin, if you'll simply tell the court what a grade 53 is.
I'm sorry, a grade 53 are our deputy sheriffs, and that includes our patrol officers, our investigators, our warrant officers, our court bailiffs, positions such as that. And deputy constables are grade 53s as well.
And that will eliminate that compression issue?
That will eliminate the issue of the challenges that they are having in recruitment. that they have found that we are having some difficulty in filling those positions for a variety of reasons. And we actually did conduct a small survey with some local agencies and did find that with counties we're okay, but with the cities we might be falling a little bit behind. And so this would address the issue with attracting employees to apply for those grade 53 deputy sheriff's, deputy constable type positions.
And Robin, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
You
No.
used the word eliminate. I think our goal here is to assist
Right.
with that recruitment issue.
Right. Yeah, obviously, I can't say whether it will completely eliminate it, but we hope that it will address that issue and give them some relief in being able to fill those positions.
Robin, on item 2, under option B,
Yes, sir.
what's the percentage of that restart the step system?
Do you mean what value each step is? The steps range in value anywhere from about 3% to 5%, depending on where it falls in the range. So they aren't a equal amount always from grade to grade and step to step.
Okay.
For the maxed out employees, they would get a 3% lump sum for one time.
Yes, sir. Based on their review date. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Other questions? Have you received responses from, and I know Bobby's going to be up here in a minute to talk about it, but have you gone over this with the sheriff, and what is his?
We actually worked on this late last evening and we're not able to provide that to either parties until this morning, but it has been provided to both the Sheriff's Department and to the Law Enforcement Association representative, and I have not had an opportunity to discuss that with them. No, sir.
When we met last time, I asked GK and the group to get with the sheriff, which they did. And I'm sure we'll hear about that. We'll get a report on it.
Okay. Is the sheriff?
It's right there.
Do you wish to make any comment regarding this at this point in time?
I'm happy to, Judge.
Sure.
If you have questions or concerns.
Well, then I'm going to call on Bobby. I don't know if you prefer to wait till after him or.
Sure. Let's hear what they say. You know.
Bobby, come on up.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. You should have received a packet this morning from the Law Enforcement Association that includes what we presented to the Salary Committee, and then I've attached a letter to the beginning of it that I'd like to read into the record, if I may. First, we want to thank you and the Commissioners for allowing me to address you and for giving us the opportunity to participate in the Law Enforcement Association Salary Committee. This year's committee only met one time, and the Law Enforcement Association made several proposals to the committee. We really had no opportunity to discuss our proposals after HR ran the numbers. We would like to take this time to make sure you understand that our proposed step structure did include a 3% structure adjustment. And we feel like it fixes all the Band-Aids that have been administered to the current step structure over the years of its use. It is also more in line with what most agencies currently use today. Because step structures are best common practice across the United States in law enforcement, we concur with the sheriff that a pay for performance merit system is not viable and will not attract new employees to not only fill the current open positions, but any other positions you might approve for the sheriff. While we understand that the economy is improving and that according to the county administrator's office, Tarrant County is faring better economically than other urban counties, we would want you to know, or we would ask that you seriously consider our proposed step structure. We want you to know that the unfreezing of the step structure, either with our proposed step structure or the current step structure, is our priority number one. If you choose to simply unfreeze the current step structure, we would recommend that you include a 3% structure adjustment along with giving those people who hired in with the county 3 and 4 years ago into law enforcement 2 steps and those who hired in with the county 2 years or less, 1 step. We would like to see this because since the steps have been frozen, there is now a compression issue in the steps 51E and 53C. We believe this would not only be fair for those employees who have not received a step increase since becoming employed in the county, but it would also be a morale booster. Also, along with the unfreezing of the current step structure, we are asking you to implement certification pay. Certification pay would retain quality employees, improve morale, attract higher quality new hires, and cut down on the liability and disciplinary cost of the county. Because reinstating the current step structure does not solve any of the current compression issues between pay grades, we would like to see the Law Enforcement Salary Committee meet on a continual basis in order to work toward resolving these ongoing issues. The Tarrant County Law Enforcement Association represents law enforcement employees in Tarrant County. In the absence of a salary proposal by the sheriff, we believe it is our duty to our membership and all Tarrant County law enforcement to work with the court in these matters. Therefore, we thank you for your time and your consideration of our recommended law enforcement salary proposals, and we look forward to working with you in the future. I'll be glad to take any questions that I might can answer.
Any question? I've not had a chance to look over the stuff that y'all handed to us today, but are there any questions at this point in time? Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Sheriff.
I guess I will be happy to answer questions that you have. I guess my comments would be brief and only to the point of the current problems and issues that Bobby has identified. Some of are of a nature that need a comprehensive fix. By unfreezing the step system, though it is a step in the right direction, he's right. We have some issues and concerns I think that the committee recognized, particularly with compression issues and lack of and too much compression with some of our areas of promotion, particularly. You know, we're having a very, very difficult time right now getting senior grade 53 deputies to promote. I mean, we've got really, really good people that I go to personally and say, please get in the promotion process. And they say, it's not worth it. There's no reason for me to promote. Because, you know, you're going to give up, you know, as a top grade 53 deputy, you know, you're going to go in as a junior sergeant where you're not only going to give up good days off and maybe good shifts and things like that and go to the bottom of the pecking order of sergeants, but you're going to do it for sometimes no more money. And, you know, it's very, very difficult to sell that to someone who's got a take-home car and this is a good job, and we're asking them to you know, start at the bottom rung. So, you know, there needs to be, you know, I think a comprehensive look at where we are. I understand it's late in the game to do this budget year, but I would encourage as we move into the next budget cycle to try to come up with some real solutions to these issues and problems that were identified by the committee. Chief Eckert represented the Sheriff's Department on the committee. He came back from the meeting encouraged that he felt like these issues were being studied and there might be some solutions at hand. The current, you know, 2 options on the table, you know, A and B, you know, though B is certainly preferable to us, obviously, you know, leave some of these issues on not addressed. I think there's merit in what the Law Enforcement Association has suggested as far as some of the step changes. I always, and Bobby and I have had this discussion several times, and he's not going to be surprised when I say this, the only issue I ever take with a lot of their calculations is that by their very nature they tend to favor the peace officers. And if you look at the percentage of adjustment they're going to make, the peace officers usually end up with a greater percentage than our grade 51 detention staff. And, you know, all I would encourage is the only changes I would like to see made is that we give similar percentages if we're going to raise, you know, deputies' salaries by a certain percentage, that we match that percentage with our detention officers as well. Because though we certainly are are doing better in the recruiting of the grade 51s. I think as the economy continues to improve, we're going to see the struggle begin again, and none of us want to return to those days of hundreds of openings when we're having job fairs and just trying to get people to come on board. So I think as the economy improves, we're going to see more and more trouble recruiting. The grade 53 issue that Robin spoke of is a huge problem for us, and it needs to be addressed immediately. We need to get that grade 53 entry salary up beyond a shadow of a doubt. So, I certainly think it deserves a comprehensive look. It deserves a different solution, perhaps, than we give across the board. And I know that's a touchy subject here. It always has been. Many of us came from worlds where public safety was considered an entirely separate entity, and we address all salaries and benefits differently. So it's a tough thing for y'all to do. I completely understand as you're looking at the county-wide budget. But I certainly, with the two options on the table, if those are the only two options on the table, the sheriff's office certainly would support the second option.
I guess the one thing that I have, I'm obviously leaning towards some part of that option B. Bobby, as I've expressed, I think, to some of y'all, the problem that I have with your step system is that there are many positions that will go into what will be a 5-year drought from getting any kind of an increase once they hit that step. There's some that are 2 years. There are some that stay in a salary step for 3 years, and there's some that stay in there for 5 years. And I just cannot fathom that that's not going to ultimately end up being a problem that we're going to hear about at a later time. I haven't had a chance to look at what HR has proposed here this morning, nor really to look at that. I don't think ready to, I think I am. I hear you and I hear the association both saying that they're not ready to eliminate the step system.
Right.
So I think that, at least for my part, I'm willing to go that step. I originally had thought doing away with the step system might be the best thing, but after talking with the sheriff, I'm not sure. I think I've changed my mind on that one.
I don't think it's very difficult if you're outside of law enforcement to understand what the step system means to law enforcement. It is a huge issue that they very tightly, cling to, and we could debate rightfully or wrong, but I just assure you that it is something they cling to very strongly.
I agree with Bobby that it has become a best practice in terms of compensation in law enforcement. What I'd like to ask Debbie is to prepare, to give us a number on what it would cost for a 2% structure adjustment in the steps and a 3% structure adjustment in the step system.
3% is in front of you now. It will cost.
That's the $1.6 million?
Well, it actually costs, 3% structure adjustment is $2.3 million.
But now, wait a minute. I want to make sure. That's $2.3 million if we don't reinstitute the movement in the steps.
Correct.
That's right. If you reinstitute the movement of the steps and you increase the structure,
You have to add it together.
you have to add those two numbers together.
So it would be 1.6 plus 2.3.
And actually, your 1 point, I'm kind of giving you unequal.
That's a yes or no.
Yes, but I'm giving you kind of unequal comparisons because my numbers include fringe benefits and HR's doesn't. So at that minimum, you have to increase those two by those numbers. It'll be a little bit more for the fringes.
And what would 2% look like?
I'm about to
If I know she's going to speculate on this in a minute. I would really hope that we wouldn't make a decision on this part of it today.
I'm just asking for information.
Okay.
A 2% would cost you. Let me just actually do the math.
And Judge, if I can say one more thing while she's calculating here, give her a minute. Your concern about the upper levels of the 5-year is a concern of mine as well. And in fact, when I met with Tina and we talked about this, I told her that, you know, if you look at the way it's structured, the people waiting 5 years are the very top people in the organization. But as I told her, I agree with you that and I've told Bobby this, I think that 5 years is too long for anyone. And I think, you know, we could certainly live with a 3-year probably window at the very top of the organization because those people are making the kind of money that they are. But I think when we looked at it overall, we would want to squeeze that top down, and you know, maybe not have a dollar impact on it, but I think we could squeeze it down where you had a little more opportunity to move up quicker.
And I also remember our conversation where you were saying about what you said earlier about the promotions and having the problem getting people to. So I do think, you know, I think regardless of what we do this year, I'm going to recommend that we at least consider having a salary or a compensation study done with regards to, because I don't think we can fix all of our problems between now and the time we're going to pass this budget. But I do think it might make sense to have a compensation study done.
And the problem, as you know, Judge, is when you fix one compression issue, you create another one.
Right. Sure.
You know, and that's the problem. You know, if we can fix it very easily between the 53s and the 54s, between the deputies and the sergeants, but then you've got the same problem between sergeant and lieutenant as you go on and on up and so that's why I'm saying it requires a comprehensive look and a comprehensive solution when you do this, because every problem you identify and try to fix kind of creates another problem.
Yeah, I favor a comprehensive study of the current structure and then make the proper adjustment once and for all.
Yeah, it would be one that you would have to be very mindful as we went forward. You'd have to be very mindful not to put the Band-Aid fixes in place that cause the problems. You'd have to make sure every time you adjusted everything correctly.
It's a short-term problem that would create a long-term issue.
True.
Sheriff, I want to thank you for being here and kind of giving us your insight in this, because I appreciate that. I think we can work this out and come up with some kind of solution that works for everybody.
Excuse me, can I ask, have y'all looked at this carefully? Yes, ma'am. You just got it this morning as well?
The numbers haven't changed, though, have they, Robin? I mean,
No, sir, that's what I was going to say.
you didn't change the numbers, did you, Bobby?
No.
So y'all had this.
The proposal is the same proposal they gave us before.
Yeah.
So
They
the
just
numbers
put a
you
new
presented
color.
to us last week,
The cost
Still
to
good.
those.
right?
The numbers didn't change. It was just.
Any other questions, Mr. Sheriff, at this time?
Deb, you got a number?
2% would be $1.565 million.
1.565. And
If you
again,
would add-
3% was,
2.350, basically.
thank you.
But just a reminder, that's what you would add to the numbers that are on your sheet.
I understand, GK.
That number being 1.6.
Yes.
Option B.
And if you add fringes to that 1.6, it's $2,030,000.
What surprises me a little bit about the 1.6 is you're talking about a structure adjustment. That I thought that 1.6 was based upon like a 3%. Was that based upon actually putting back into the step? Because a lot of the steps are 3. Most of them are well above 3. Some of them are 4 and 5%. So when you move the step system back into place, I don't know how and you're talking about giving a 2% on top of that, I don't know how you're getting to the number you're giving out.
Well, you got to keep in mind with the steps themselves, they are spread throughout the year. So there are people out there that will get 12 months worth of salary increase in fiscal year 13, and there are people that will get 1 month worth. Now, the real ripple effect, and we haven't taken the time to look at this because we were working with all this information late last night. The real ripple effect with a stepping system, if you go back and you equalize all of those pay increases that are throughout the year, it will have a significant increase in 2014.
Well, I'd kind of like to know what we're doing now
Yeah.
instead of.
And we'll take the time today and do that for you and get that information to you. Because they do could occur throughout the year. As a matter of fact, Ange, did you bring that information with you? That plots out the steps, how many steps are in each month? Do we have that? Because we were curious, where, if there is a month, because needless to say, when the step system was implemented, we had to take a month, pick a month to implement it. So we were interested in, is there a cluster of those steps someplace throughout the year? And there's really not. The most are in January. There's 226 eligible employees. But if you take it down to the last month of the fiscal year, there's about 70 some odd that are due in. So they pretty much, after you get past January, fall kind of consistent throughout the year.
So as we look at this reinstituting the movements within the steps, we would keep them on the same, and I guess those are anniversary dates of employment, as opposed to just saying, boom, on September the 1st or on January the 1st, everybody moves a step.
That's what option B is recommending, yes. It happens on their true review date, which I'm sorry, Chair, which is either their hire date or it's a promotion date.
And as Robin said in her presentation, the prospect of having to do everyone's evaluation in the sheriff's office on a single date is a little
And we were
bit,
very conscientious of that.
a little bit daunting, and they have been, and that's not something we would want to try to tackle, to be honest with you. Our 12 months continuous monthly evaluations are much, much better for us.
So if we were to give, as I think has been proposed, we've talked about here just a little bit, a structure adjustment and then a step, would the structure adjustment be effective January?
It'd have to be effective, well, you'd have to pick a month to make it effective. I would, sitting here today, I'd say it'd have to be October 1st. Because you have people on October 1st that are now eligible for a step increase. So you have to adjust your structure at the beginning of the fiscal year. Anybody disagree with that?
So in effect, because otherwise you could have somebody who is going to sit here and not get any kind of an increase or a structure, if we don't adjust the structure at October 1st.
Correct.
Then they could end up being in, I guess, August or September, and have gone through the year and gotten no increase whatsoever.
Well, you're going to adjust the structure at some point. Even January or October. They'll get something in January if you make January 1st the date. Then they'll get.
But in the past, even last year, when we adjusted the structures on the 3%, how did we make sure that we took into account that if they didn't get a rating above 2.95, they weren't going to get the 3%? Well, I guess it happens in Europe. It just happens unless you.
Absolutely.
The Sheriff's Department does the evaluation of their employees regardless of the pay.
Okay, so that's not an issue on the law enforcement side?
No, it's not.
Well,
okay.
Structure adjustments are not tied to pay for performance anyway.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
They'll get that regardless of evaluation.
In either system.
Yeah, the merit pool is the only place.
Oh, yeah, they are. Our 3% last year, our 3% adjustment last year, you had to get an evaluation in order to get that.
Correct. That is correct.
A structure adjustment.
It wasn't a structure,
it was a
adjustment.
3%.
It was a 3%.
You're talking about non-law enforcement?
Yes.
Yes.
It was a 3% pay increase. But in order to get that pay increase.
We were talking about structure adjustments. If you move the value of the structure in either system, then it does not depend upon the evaluation of the employee.
That's a mixed answer. I mean, we only adjusted in 2012 the maximum of the non-law enforcement structures. Nobody got any benefit from that.
I'm speaking theoretically,
Theoretically,
not something that we've done in 2012 or any other.
Theoretically, when you adjust both ends, only those employees at the lowest end are eligible for any sort of increase, and it's still contingent on the department head approving it. So you may have someone that is truly new, and you do not feel that that adjustment is warranted. And if they're still within their probationary period, then you've got 6 months, a total of 6 months worth of their employment in order to make that adjustment to the new hire end. So it's not totally automatic. Now, I would say probably 99.99999% of those people do get that, but it is only the lowest, the low end of the system.
The only time it would be automatic is if you had an employee that is not at the hiring rate, but is at the lowest point in that grade. Then when you raise it, then you'd have to give it to them.
Because the structure moves beyond them.
Anything else of the sheriff?
Do your people require certifications throughout their career?
Yes.
But the positions do not require certification?
No, we do not. They earn them.
Do not require.
We do not require certifications for positions normally, but they do. They achieve those as they move through their career, and some of it is longevity, but some of it is also through education and continued training, which makes the certifications very valuable to them. And it also is certainly if someone has that certification and is coming into an agency, it makes them a much more hireable person for you because of the level of skill and training that's required to reach some of those levels.
When you evaluate an employee of yours to give them a pay raise, for example, do you take certification into consideration?
We would on an employee that we felt like was either well ahead or well behind. If someone was a real hard charger and goes out and gets those certifications earlier than normal, yeah, that would be something we would consider. And the same thing if someone was lagging woefully behind on that. There's a certain point where we think people need to get their intermediate certification, and if they get it early, well, then we're going to consider that as part of the evaluation process. If they've been here years and years and years and haven't shown the initiative to get it yet, we will use that as part of the evaluation process to try to spur them along and get them moving and say, hey, we need you to pick up and get these certifications.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you all very much.
Are we ready to move on to the justice of the peace?
Sure.
Members of the court, I'll lay this out, and HR, if they want to address it, then they can come forward also. You might recall that the JPs had requested a salary increase and made a presentation to the Commissioners Court. I believe that their salary increase was close to 110, up to 110. What we've done is provided you a survey, and this survey is based on the 2012 tax survey. And what we took the 5 largest counties plus Denton County and Collin County. And in Tarrant County, we have 2 columns, one in a blue and one in a tan color. The tan color one is what we are currently paying in this current fiscal year. So if you look of the Justice of the Peace, they are currently making $89,248. The blue is simply that column, and it includes other elected officials, that if we do a 3% merit on employees, what we've historically done, we have granted that 3% to the various elected and appointed officials. I think Ms. Worthy actually talked about that earlier today. So if we don't do anything, what happens is that effective October 1, the blue column would come into effect. So if you look at the JPs, they currently make a little over $89,000. You can see what Dallas County is 105, Harris is 119, Travis is 105, Denton is 73, and Collin actually has a spread of, and so does Bayer, and you can see what those numbers are. So we give this to you just as a discussion point. I know that that all of you have heard the presentation by the justices of the peace, and this topic is open for discussion and any action that the court might want to take at this time. Robin, do you have anything else? Okay, great.
Their request was 110, wasn't it?
I believe it was.
Huh?
I believe it was, yes.
I think we also got for you information regarding the weddings, because that had been a discussion that we talked a little bit about. Those are running anywhere from a low of about 174 for a 10-month period, all the way up to about a little over 800. So, I mean, if you look at it on an average of $100 a wedding, that could be anywhere from $17,000 to $80,000 for a 10-month period on that. The two lower ones are your two newer JPs, Lisa and Matt. The upper ones, this information, again, represents a 10-month period from that standpoint.
Well, I personally think we're opening a big keg of worms if we start trying to dig into their weddings. I don't know of any other county out of the 254 in the state that does that. Does anyone?
No, and again, I don't disagree with that, but it does occur within our buildings. When we look at the overall compensation, I think at least it explains why, if it weren't for those weddings, then I would definitely say to you, I believe that their compensation is well below average. They indicated that that's a part of what is expected of them, and I don't disagree with them. I really don't. But I think they are being compensated for that, and that is almost a part of the job. I'm just simply saying that I think they're making anywhere from another, 17 to as much maybe as $80,000 in that. So their compensation, at least, they're getting that, a lot of that, because they are JPs within the county, and that's a part of the responsibility that they get to do. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't give them any kind of an increase, but I'm saying that as we look at their compensation, to ignore the fact that they're doing these weddings and they're being compensated for that, I think if they were not JPs, they would not be getting that revenue.
I wanted to ask another question to Robin or Debbie or somebody. When is the last time that we looked at JP's salary and gave them an increase other than the norm 3% or whatever?
We have not ever done that with elected officials as far as, we've occasionally done some surveys similar to this when there's been questions. And, of course, they have always gotten just the automatic flat percentage that was approved by the court. So we haven't specifically looked at any of our elected officials in that manner.
None of the elected officials, including the constables?
That's correct. Again, like I say, occasionally we've called a few counties if there's been a question, but it's not been anything that was formal or widespread.
Well, my personal opinion is that until the legislature changes the law on weddings, that's not something that we ought to take into consideration. I also believe that the JPs and constables, whatever we do, should stay in the same ratio as they are now.
So then you would suggest that if we increase the JPs, we also increase the constables?
Correct.
Sure.
These numbers right here, GK,
Yes, sir.
they are Are they the average of the current numbers at the other counties?
These are the current numbers. Where we found this information is that the Texas Association of Counties does an annual salary survey.
Okay.
And they publish that, and we retrieved this information from that book. It was 2012.
So these numbers are good and solid?
That's, according to that study, yes.
The reason I believe that the ratio should hold constant is that because neither office can perform its functions without the other. They are dependent upon each other for the performance of their duties.
Now, for clarification for me, are the JPs the only judges who are able to do weddings?
No.
By law?
I believe district judges can do weddings as well.
The elected judge.
In fact, Judge Whitley you can't.
No, I cannot perform weddings.
I mean, I think there is some continuing education requirement behind it. Is that why you?
That's why I've chosen not to do it, so there's no need to go get a continuing.
But
you could. No, I could not without going and getting some continuing
education. But we could go get all the continued education we want, and we still can't marry people. But you could, if you want.
I think that's right. Is that right?
Because there's a lot of judges throughout 254 counties that do marry, have marriage.
Well, maybe we should go into business.
And Vandergrift used to here, and I don't know of him ever going outside of Tarrant County.
Hasn't the legislature made it legal for municipal judges now to do marriage?
Well, mayors can too.
Mayors can too?
When I was general law mayor of Saginaw, I could legally perform weddings.
Well, then you may still be able to, because I think there's some of the retired judges believe they still can. Believe may be the key word in that deal.
I didn't retire. I quit.
Moncrief's married people from when he was judge here.
Well, that's why I just said it. Again, it goes back to why? Because I was elected to do that. Without that election, then they wouldn't be able to do it, and they wouldn't be able to charge that fee for it, nor would I or anybody else from that standpoint.
But once a judge retires, they can't perform. I guess I need to ask you this.
I think they can. I think they can.
I thought they could too. Because
continue to do it.
Judge Moncrief, I think, has come back and had wedding ceremonies after he went out as judge.
Well, maybe back during his time frame, the DA's office wouldn't have ruled that was not.
I attended a service over which Senator Moncrief at the time participated, but he had a preacher to pronounce.
Oh, really?
Right.
Well, I told him in Saginaw that I wasn't legally allowed to do that. So, and if that didn't work, I said, well, I'm going to be out of town that day. But it's general law, not
home rule.
Home rule, yeah.
What's your pleasure?
Well, I think we ought to look at and consider the justice of the peace. That's the only one that's come forward to us. Other than Commissioner Brooks has brought it up, and if we need to discuss that at a later date.
Do you want to take action today, or do you want to wait until we've had a chance, we all had a chance to talk a little bit more about it?
As I believe that the two should be linked, I'm not willing to take action on one without the other.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
Well, I move that we increase the justice of the peace salary to $105,000.
I'll second that.
See if that goes anywhere.
We have a motion and a second.
105 even.
105 even.
Any discussion?
I don't have a problem with the 105, but my vote against this is because there's no effort to keep the constables in lockstep with the JP.
Please vote. Motion passes 3-2.
We will continue to have this particular agenda item on the agenda because as we move forward, we're going to have some continued discussions on the 28th, and we need to start finalizing our decisions as it relates to the law enforcement piece.
So what you're saying, we could still amend or sit?
No, I'm saying that court can do anything they want to. What I'm saying is that we have additional decisions to make, and the court needs to make those within the next week or so. We have one final item to bring to you today. This concerns the purchasing department, and the item that's listed on your agenda. Mr. Beecham is here to address the court at this time.
Hello again. We've been directed by the purchasing board to brief the Commissioners Court on our cooperative purchasing program. We will be brief. About 16 years ago, we began our cooperative purchasing endeavor with the City of Colleyville. Our logic was very simply to increase our quantities, leverage our buying power, and decrease our costs. We've accomplished that today. As you saw in the court agenda, we signed up our 365th cooperative member. We have 2 more in line, as I understand it. The question was raised in December 2011 by Judge Whitley concerning potentially charging entities to participate in a cooperative purchasing program. And because of that inquiry, that question, which came before the purchasing board, we conducted a survey of the 19 largest contracts that we have in Tarrant County. The results came back that most of our prices would increase if those entities went away and it was just Tarrant County buying by herself alone. We met with the purchasing board. We have a PowerPoint presentation this morning from Paul Bodley, the regional sales director with Staples. Our office supply contract is one of the largest utilized contracts in our cooperative endeavor. We have 65 entities that purchase from Staples on the Tarrant County contract. We've met with Staples on a quarterly basis. We've been contractually tied with them through the sealed bid process for the last 16 years. They've been an excellent supplier for us. And about 2 years ago, based on our quarterly meetings with Staples, we asked the question that you'll see a PowerPoint presentation here very shortly on. And the question was, if necessary, were there other available options to Tarrant County as far as potential revenue from the participating entities that purchase from our office supply contract. We put that on the back burner. When the question came up from Judge Whitley in December of 2011, we brought that back to life. And I'd like to introduce Paul Bodley, again, the regional sales director with Staples, to talk to you about that process.
Judge Whitley, Commissioners, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Use the keyboard here, okay? Yeah, it's just 3 or 4 slides. This is an opportunity for Tarrant County. It's an opportunity for the members of the Tarrant County Purchasing Cooperative, and it's an opportunity for Staples. I'm going to start. It's the rebate to Tarrant Counties based on the aggregate amount spent by the members, which this year it looks like will probably touch $10 million. Typically, it's been between $5 and $8 million. But we structured the rebate back to Tarrant County based on historical data. 3% would come back to the county on purchases up to $10 million. We would increase the rebate to 3.5%, between $10 and $20 million. And over $20 million, the rebate would go to 4%. Now, that's back to $1 in every case. The retail stores are not included. Staples is organized in 3 major divisions. We have retail, which you're probably most familiar with. The division I represent is contract, and then our international division. So the retail store purchases would be separate from what we're discussing today. Now, the advantage for the members, the 365 entities that belong to the co-op, we would, number one, they enjoy the low pricing that Tarrant County has negotiated. The last contract was, we went through a rigorous RFP process with Mr. Beecham and his team back in 2009. So they enjoy the low pricing realized from that. And in addition to that, we'll be able to pay them a 3% rebate, up to 3%, I should say. So we've divided it into tiers from $0 to $2.5 million or $250,000. The entity would receive 1%, from $250,000 to $500,000, 2%, and then any entities spending over $500,000 with Staples would receive a 3% rebate. Okay? And again, same rules apply. Goes back to $1 in each case, and retail store purchases are not included.
Now, is that in addition to the 3% that's coming to Tarrant County?
That's correct. So the challenge that we had when this was presented to us was how to make this a benefit to all of the parties involved. So I think the benefit to the county, Tarrant County, by the way, which I'm a resident of Tarrant County, and the cooperative members are pretty evident. It's a revenue stream. Staples, the advantage for us would be to lock in the contract through December the 31st, 2014. That would be a huge benefit to us. In addition to that, Mr. Beecham mentioned that only 65 of the 350 entities are buying through the Tarrant County Co-op network right now. So we have, 250, 285 opportunities out there. And now with this program, I think we have a real compelling story to tell. So our revenue could increase significantly. That's our goal. 20 million, 25 million, 30 million. Any questions that I could try to answer for you?
From our perspective, I think if we were to go along and do something like this, one of the first things I would want to do would be to disclose to any entities that we are receiving this and that we're doing this in an effort to recover some of the costs of our purchasing department as it pertains to the work of going into all these interlocal agreements for other entities. There are some contracts that we do, not the office supply obviously, where we may go through the bid process and not end up buying anything off of it. So I think there are some instances where we're acting as a cooperative really to
go through the bid process for somebody else besides us?
Yes. We have at least one contract that we went through a bid process, I think it was on Wilburn or something, that we looked at the contracts where we never bought anything off of it.
If I might answer that, Judge, that's correct, but I can assure you that every contract that we put on the street, we do for Tarrant County. We found over the years that in case we didn't buy a sheep's foot roller one year, we want to have a contract in place just in case we need it. We have received requests by the by for savings or whatever where Tarrant County needs that item to be purchased right away. We've never honestly put out something for somebody else except for Tarrant County. But you're right. When we've not utilized that contract on a specific year, somebody else has done that, has purchased or taken advantage of the price that's there. We've done it just for Tarrant County over and over again. Every time something has happened to us, every time we allow, and we've done that over the years, allow a contract to lapse, thinking that we won't need that item or that commodity, we'll get a request for it the next month. So we always keep or try to keep a contract live in case there's an emergency purchase or something we might need for Tarrant County.
I understand that, but again, if we're going out for contracts, usually when we go out for RFP, we go out with specifications. And so if we're not going to need it, how do we determine what our specifications are?
Specifications are set up for Tarrant County only. A lot of times if we'll add, as we do for vehicles, you'll add all the options, and if we need what we have available a price for that, they can build it from the ground up to satisfy their needs, but it's really, again, done for Tarrant County.
Any other questions?
I appreciate your offer.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Next step?
What we'd like to do is bring back to the court a recommendation, and in talking with the DA's office, something that you said yourself, we would need to notify the participating entities that we are doing something like this. We can certainly.
I guess it would be a twofold. One, it would be that we're going to be receiving a rebate, and two, they will be also receiving a rebate based upon their purchases for these out years as long as they're a participant in this.
What that would entail from Staples, as this particular contract expires December 31 of this year. There are 2 one-year renewal options left. We would bring back to Commissioner's Court in that court communique very simply asking that this contract, with the funding out clause intact, which is required by law, that we would forego the formality of renewing this contract for 2 more years. So this contract would then expire December 31, 2014, with the funding out clause intact. And that would give them the incentive to increase the participation with the other entities.
So you've run that by the DA's office?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We're prepared to bring that back to court next week.
Thank you, Jack. Very good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe also, Jack, something I didn't hear from you was that you're going to solicit some of our other large suppliers that we're buying from to see if they wouldn't do something similar to this.
Exactly, and I'll use an example. Tarrant County purchased the mobile command vehicle from the state of Indiana a couple of years ago, and there was not a charge for us to make that one-time buy. I've said this before, and our goal is for everybody to purchase off every contract. That's going to take 100 years to do that. I don't think that's reality. We will strive towards that. But some of the 365 entities purchase off contracts on a one-time or maybe twice. A good example, we will bring back to Commissioner's Court law enforcement vehicles, which are on the street right now. We've heard through the grapevine that the state of Texas actually will have a more competitive bid on law enforcement vehicles than we have. So we do shop those co-op prices to always obtain the best price and bring that back to this court for approval. But we will look at each contract on a case-by-case basis. Some of the contracts are split by the item. This is a good example. All the companies aren't as large as Staples or as profitable. They have the mechanism to make this work and for it to be a partnership through the bid process. Smaller.
Give them an opportunity to participate.
Yes, sir. But all of them aren't. If you award 4 items or 1 item or 3 items on an item-by-item award to a hub vendor, it may not be possible. But we will look at every one of them and look for those opportunities.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We don't have any other items for today.
We'll recess our open session and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under Section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087 of the Texas Government Code. DK?
Judge.
I will remind, we're going to adjourn in memory of Jim Pryor. Having returned from our closed session and there being no matters to discuss at this time, we are adjourned.